How many times have you said yes when everything inside you was screaming no? That moment when your stomach tightens, your chest feels heavy, and a wave of guilt follows because you betrayed yourself just to keep someone else happy. You smile on the outside, but deep down you know you've surrendered a piece of your self-respect. Does this sound familiar? You're not alone. Most people struggle with the fear of disappointing others, and in that fear, they end up disappointing themselves. The truth is, constantly saying yes when you don't mean it is not kindness, it's self-abandonment, and over time it leaves scars that run deeper than you think. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, warned about the danger of living behind a mask. He called it the persona, the false self we create to be accepted, to avoid conflict, to protect ourselves from rejection. But every time we silence our inner voice just to maintain harmony, we drift further away from who we truly are. Think about it. How many of your yeses were actually lies you told yourself just to avoid guilt? And yet that guilt never really disappears, does it? Instead, it grows stronger, turning into resentment, exhaustion, even a quiet anger at life. Imagine how different things could be if you had the courage to say no without guilt, to protect your energy, your time, your self-worth, to stand firm in your truth without feeling that you're being selfish. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self, requires boundaries. Without them, you're at the mercy of everyone else's demands, but with them, you step into your own power. You might be wondering, how do I do that without destroying my relationships? How do I set limits without being consumed by shame or fear? Stay with me, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. We live in a world that celebrates self-sacrifice but punishes self-respect. From an early age, you were likely taught to please others, to avoid conflict, to smile even when you were hurting. But here's the paradox. The more you erase yourself to please others, the less they respect you, and the less you respect yourself. Think about the people you admire the most. They are not the ones who constantly bend and compromise. They are the ones who stand firm, who know when to say no, who protect their inner world like a sacred ground. Doesn't that spark something inside you? A sense that you deserve the same? You've probably been in situations where you felt trapped, torn between protecting your peace and keeping someone else comfortable. Maybe it was at work, with family, or even with friends. And every time you gave in, a part of you whispered, "This isn't me." That whisper is your truth calling out. And the moment you learn to honor it, your life begins to change. So let's step deeper into Jung's wisdom and uncover why saying no is not a rejection of others, but an affirmation of yourself. The real question is, are you ready to hear it? And as you reflect on those moments when you said yes against your will, I want to ask you something. Have you ever noticed how heavy that silence feels inside you? That inner voice that says, "Why didn't I speak up?" It's a universal struggle, and sharing it out loud can be the first step toward freeing yourself from it. That's why I invite you to leave a comment below. Tell me about a time when you felt the weight of saying yes when you wanted to say no. Or maybe share what part of this message has resonated most with you so far. Your words don't just stay here. They help build a space where others realize they're not alone in this journey. And if this conversation is striking a chord with you, take a second to like this video. It may seem like a small gesture, but every single like tells the platform that this is a message worth spreading, and it helps more people discover ideas that can shift their lives. Most importantly, if you feel that these insights matter to you, if you want to keep exploring the wisdom of Jung and the timeless truths of philosophy and psychology, make sure to subscribe. This channel exists because of people like you, people searching for depth, clarity, and the courage to live more authentically. Subscribing is not just about following, it's about joining a community that is choosing to grow together, step by step. So let your voice be heard in the comments, support this message with your like, and stay connected by subscribing. Because the more we engage here, the stronger this movement becomes, and the further this message of self-respect and inner freedom can reach. Now let's continue, because Jung's wisdom goes even deeper, and the real transformation begins when we understand what lies beneath the guilt we feel when we say no. Why is it so hard to simply say no? On the surface, it feels like a small word, but inside it carries the weight of years of conditioning. From the time we are children, we are taught that approval equals safety. We learn that if we obey, if we please, if we keep others comfortable, we will be rewarded with love and acceptance. And so, little by little, the fear of rejection takes root. This fear grows quietly, shaping our decisions in the background, until one day we realize we are saying yes to things that drain us, while saying no to ourselves. Jung understood this deeply. He described the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society, the polished version of ourselves that hides the raw truth underneath. The persona helps us fit in, but it also traps us. When you constantly adjust yourself to please others, you become a character in someone else's play, instead of the author of your own story. Think about how many times you have agreed to something only because you wanted to avoid conflict. The unspoken bargain is clear. I will sacrifice my peace if you promise to still like me. But that bargain has a hidden cost. Each time you do it, your authentic self steps further into the shadows, and soon the mask feels heavier than your own face. The irony is that people rarely admire endless compliance. What they respect is authenticity, courage, and clarity. Yet we hide those qualities because we're afraid they will push others away. The truth is that this struggle is not weakness. It is a survival strategy built into the psychology of approval. But when survival becomes habit, it blocks transformation. You may believe you're protecting relationships, when in reality you're silencing your inner voice. This silence is why guilt lingers long after you say yes. You are not betraying others, you are betraying yourself, and that is why the impact feels so heavy. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because the persona is only one layer of the truth. Beneath it lies the unconscious programming that drives us to seek approval at all costs, and unlocking that truth can change how you make decisions forever. So, before we continue, I want you to write in the comments, "This makes sense to me." Let's see how many of us are ready to face the masks we've been wearing. When you always say yes, the price is never just the time you give away. The real cost hides beneath the surface, where your energy, self-respect, and even your identity slowly erode. At first it feels harmless. You agree to one more task at work, you say yes to a favor you don't have the strength for, you show up for someone when you should have rested. But over time, this constant pattern builds a quiet exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. It's the exhaustion of living out of alignment, of giving pieces of yourself away without ever stopping to refill. And then comes resentment. You may still smile and nod, but inside a storm brews. You feel unappreciated, overlooked, even invisible. The people around you might not even notice, because the mask you wear hides it so well. Yet the bitterness grows, and with it comes a dangerous distance from who you truly are. Carl Jung warned that when we neglect the self, when we ignore that inner voice crying out for balance, we invite conflict into the psyche. That conflict can turn into neurosis, a fracture between the life we live and the life our soul demands. This is not just philosophy, it's lived reality. How many people collapse under stress, not because of one big tragedy, but because of 1,000 small concessions? Saying yes to everything is like pouring water into everyone else's glass while your own cup runs dry. Eventually, there is nothing left to give, and the emptiness becomes unbearable. Worse still, you begin to forget who you are outside of others' expectations. Your identity shrinks to the roles you play, the dependable friend, the loyal employee, the endlessly giving partner. But underneath, the authentic self waits, frustrated and ignored. The hidden cost of always saying yes is not only exhaustion and resentment, it is the slow death of self-respect. And once self-respect fades, it becomes nearly impossible to set boundaries because you no longer believe your needs are worth protecting. This cycle is exactly what Jung described as the danger of neglecting the inner life. To live only for others is to abandon yourself, and in that abandonment, you invite a deeper kind of suffering that no external approval can ever fix. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because understanding these costs is only the beginning. Do you think the real question is, how do we reclaim self-respect and protect our identity without drowning in guilt? That's where Jung's insights on boundaries and individuation reveal their true power. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the lifelong process of becoming your true self, cannot happen without boundaries. To individuate means to peel away the layers of masks, expectations, and roles until what remains is the authentic core of who you are. But how can that process unfold if you are constantly bending to the will of others? Every time you fail to draw a line, you blur the edges of your identity, and individuation becomes impossible. This is why boundaries are not selfish walls. They are gateways to authenticity. Think of a boundary as the frame around a painting. Without the frame, the image bleeds into the background and loses definition. With it, the painting stands clear, distinct, respected. Your no works the same way. It defines where you end and where others begin. Far from creating distance, it allows genuine connection to flourish because people can only truly meet you when they know who you are. Jung emphasized that a life lived only to satisfy the persona, the mask, remains shallow and fragmented. Boundaries are the tools that allow you to step out of that mask and claim the full depth of your character. In daily life, this plays out in the smallest of choices. When you say no to an extra commitment that drains you, you are saying yes to rest, clarity, and strength. When you refuse to carry someone else's burden at the expense of your own peace, you are affirming that your well-being matters. These choices may feel uncomfortable, especially if you have been conditioned to equate boundaries with selfishness. But Jung's wisdom reframes them as acts of courage, moments where you prioritize authenticity over approval. Boundaries are not meant to push people away. They are meant to protect the ground on which true connection is built. Without them, relationships often become imbalanced, filled with silent resentment or hidden expectations. With them, relationships become clearer, healthier, more honest. Jung understood that the soul cannot thrive in an environment of constant compromise. It needs the oxygen of self-respect to grow. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because if boundaries are the doorway to authenticity, then guilt is the shadow standing guard. To truly embrace your no, we must first understand why guilt rises so powerfully when we try to protect ourselves. Guilt is often the first emotion that rises the moment you attempt to say no. It creeps in like an unwelcome guest, whispering that you are selfish, unkind, or even unworthy of love if you dare to put yourself first. Jung would say this guilt comes from the shadow, the hidden part of our psyche that holds the emotions and desires we've been taught to repress. From childhood, we are told to be agreeable, to avoid conflict, to suppress anger, to silence our needs. All of these unexpressed parts sink into the shadow, and when you finally stand up for yourself with a clear boundary, the shadow pushes back with guilt, as if to punish you for breaking the rules you were conditioned to obey. But guilt is not always a signal that you are doing something wrong. Often it is proof that you are finally doing something right. It means you are stepping outside the patterns of compliance that once kept you safe, but now keep you small. Jung believed that facing the shadow is essential for transformation. By confronting those old feelings of shame and anger, you bring them into the light of awareness, and instead of being controlled by them, you gain clarity. Every no you say to others is also a yes to yourself. It is a yes to your time, your peace, your energy, your truth. Think of the impact this has on your mental and emotional state. Instead of being drained by constant obligations, you create space to grow, to breathe, to live with intention. The guilt that once felt like a heavy chain becomes a signal that you are reclaiming lost parts of yourself. Over time, the weight lifts, and what remains is strength, the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth. This is not about rejecting others. It is about refusing to reject yourself. The shadow only holds power as long as it stays hidden. The moment you face it, guilt transforms into clarity, anger becomes courage, and repression gives way to authenticity. Saying no, then, is not an act of selfishness, but a profound declaration of self-respect. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because if guilt is the shadow's voice, then self-respect is the antidote that silences it, and learning to cultivate that respect changes everything about how we navigate relationships and decisions. Self-respect is often misunderstood. Many people confuse it with arrogance, with pride, or with building walls so high that no one can reach you. But in Jung's understanding, self-respect is something far deeper. It is not about looking down on others. It is about refusing to look down on yourself. It is the quiet alignment with your own inner truth, the recognition that your voice, your needs, and your well-being are just as important as anyone else's. Without this alignment, life slowly loses its sense of meaning. You may succeed outwardly, gain approval, even appear strong, but inside, there is an emptiness because you have abandoned the very center of your being. Jung warned that when we ignore the inner voice, we sever our connection to purpose. That inner voice is not noise. It is the compass guiding us toward authenticity. When you respect yourself, you honor that compass. Every decision you make, is filtered through the question, does this align with who I really am? In that sense, self-respect becomes the foundation of a life lived with clarity. Without it, boundaries crumble and guilt dictates your choices. With it, you walk a straighter path. 1. Where your yes carries real power because it comes from truth, not obligation. Think about how differently relationships feel when they are rooted in self-respect. You no longer agree out of fear, nor do you bend simply to avoid conflict. Instead, you engage with honesty. Paradoxically, this honesty builds stronger bonds because people can trust you to be real. Jung believed that the process of individuation, of becoming whole, was impossible without this kind of integrity. To abandon yourself is to step away from the very meaning that makes life worth living. So self-respect is not an external display. It is an internal alignment. It is waking up each day knowing you are living in truth rather than performance. And every time you choose to honor that alignment, you strengthen your connection to purpose. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because self-respect alone is not enough. You need practical ways to put it into action, strategies to say no clearly and confidently, without carrying the old weight of guilt. One of the greatest challenges in reclaiming your self-respect is not just understanding the need to say no, but finding practical ways to actually do it. Awareness without action keeps you trapped in the same cycle. Jung's principle of authenticity teaches us that every response we give to the world should reflect who we truly are, not the mask we think others want to see. So how do we translate that into daily life when the pressure to say yes feels overwhelming? The first step is simple but powerful. Pause before answering. Most people agree too quickly, almost automatically, because silence feels uncomfortable. But when you give yourself even a few seconds to breathe, you create space for your inner truth to surface. That pause is where authenticity lives. Instead of rushing to please, you allow your real self to have a voice. The second step is to shift your language. Instead of saying, "I can't," which implies weakness or lack of ability, say, "I choose not to." That phrase carries authority. It communicates that your decision is intentional, not forced. The words we use shape how others perceive us and how we perceive ourselves. By choosing language that reflects agency, you reinforce your boundaries without apology. The third step is to use firm but respectful language. Boundaries are not about aggression, they are about clarity. Saying no does not require anger or hostility. It requires steadiness. You can decline with kindness and still stand strong. In fact, firmness delivered with respect is far more powerful than avoidance or excuses. It shows that you value yourself while still honoring the humanity of the other person. Each of these strategies may feel awkward at first, especially if you have spent years surrendering your voice, but they are acts of practice, and with each attempt, they become easier. Jung believed that authenticity is not a sudden revelation, but a daily discipline. Every pause, every choice of words, every firm no rooted in respect is a step toward individuation, toward the alignment of your outer actions with your inner truth. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because beyond strategies, what truly strengthens your ability to say no is training your inner world through conscious exercises that rewire how you respond under pressure. Building the strength to say no without guilt does not happen overnight. It's like exercising a muscle that has been neglected for years. You start small, and with each repetition it grows stronger. One of the simplest and most effective ways to train this inner muscle is by practicing small no's in low-stakes situations. It could be declining an extra slice of cake when you're already full, refusing a minor request that doesn't align with your priorities, or choosing not to answer a message immediately just because someone expects it. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are powerful signals to your unconscious mind that your choices matter. Jung believed that transformation begins not in dramatic gestures, but in the quiet, consistent acts that realign us with our authentic self. Every time you practice a small no, you weaken the grip of old patterns that demanded compliance. You begin to prove to yourself that the world does not collapse when you protect your own boundaries. Instead, what collapses are the illusions that kept you enslaved to guilt and fear. To deepen this practice, keep a journal. After each experience, ask yourself, what am I really saying yes to when I say no? This question reframes the act of refusal as a declaration of value. By saying no to exhaustion, you are saying yes to rest. By saying no to overcommitment, you are saying yes to clarity and focus. By saying no to toxic demands, you are saying yes to your peace of mind. Writing these reflections reinforces the truth that boundaries are not walls, but choices that direct your energy toward what truly matters. Over time, these small steps accumulate into a profound shift in your mental landscape. You no longer see no as rejection, but as affirmation. Each refusal becomes a reminder that your time, energy, and identity are worthy of protection. And as this awareness grows, you find yourself capable of setting stronger boundaries in the areas of life that matter most. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because once you've begun building strength in yourself, the next challenge is to understand how boundaries don't just protect you, they can also transform the quality of your relationships. Most people fear that setting boundaries will damage their relationships, that saying no will push people away or make them seem cold. But the opposite is true. Boundaries, when expressed with clarity and respect, become the very soil in which trust and intimacy can grow. When you say yes out of obligation, the connection may appear smooth on the surface, but beneath it lies resentment, fatigue, and silent frustration. That is not true closeness, it's a performance. Real relationships thrive not on sacrifice, but on honesty. Think of it this way. When you allow yourself to say no, you give the other person the gift of authenticity. They are no longer interacting with a mask or a role you forced yourself to play, but with your real self. That honesty may feel uncomfortable at first, especially for those who are used to you always agreeing. Yet over time, it builds respect, because people begin to trust your words. When you say yes, they know it's genuine. When you say no, they know it's truthful. That consistency becomes a foundation stronger than endless compliance ever could. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, not only liberates the individual but also strengthens the collective. A person who respects themselves is far more capable of contributing meaningfully to others. Without boundaries, you show up depleted, fragmented, and resentful. With boundaries, you show up grounded, present, and alive. The paradox is clear. By protecting yourself, you become more available for true connection. Boundaries also reveal who truly values you. Those who only sought your compliance may drift away, while those who cherish your authentic self will draw closer. This natural shift filters relationships, leaving behind connections rooted in honesty rather than dependency. Far from losing people, you gain depth in the ones that remain. So boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges. They define the space where two individuals can meet without losing themselves. And as Jung taught, when you bring your whole self into a relationship, you enrich not just your own life, but the lives of everyone around you. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because once we see how boundaries transform our relationships, the final step is to understand how each no becomes an act of empowerment, an awakening that leads us closer to our authentic freedom. Every time you say no with clarity, you are not shutting doors. You are opening the path back to yourself. A boundary is not an act of rejection, it is an act of creation. It creates space for your peace, your energy, your values, and your growth. Think about how empowering it feels when your decisions come not from guilt or fear, but from alignment with your inner truth. That is the moment when your no becomes more than a refusal. It becomes a declaration of self-respect. Jung reminded us that neglecting the self leads to inner conflict, but honoring the self leads to wholeness. Each time you choose authenticity over compliance, you strengthen that wholeness. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, even carry yourself differently, because you are no longer fragmented between who you are and who others expect you to be. This is not arrogance, it is integrity. It is living without apology for honoring your own humanity. And yes, there will be times when guilt tries to creep back in, when old fears whisper that you are being selfish, but now you know the truth. Guilt is only the echo of outdated conditioning. Each no is also a yes to your time, your voice, your dreams. The impact of this shift is not only personal, but collective. When you embody self-respect, you inspire others to do the same. You become a quiet force of transformation, showing by example that life does not collapse when we protect our boundaries. Instead, it expands. So let this be your reminder. Boundaries are not walls. They are mirrors reflecting the value you hold within. The courage to say no is the same courage that allows you to live with purpose. If this message resonated with you, Share in the comments. What's one situation where you need the courage to say no? Let's create a space where self-respect becomes the new normal, and together, rewrite what it means to live with authenticity and power. If you made it all the way here, that already says a lot about the path you're on and the kind of transformation you're looking for in your own life. If this conversation spoke to you, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next insights we'll uncover together. That way, you'll always have a place to return when you need perspective, clarity, or simply a reminder that your inner voice matters. I'd love to know who stayed with me until the very end, so drop a comment saying, "This message was for me." It's a simple way to mark your presence here and let me know these words reached you. And if you felt a connection during this journey, give this video a like. It's a small gesture, but it tells me this kind of content is meaningful and worth continuing. And before you go, there's another video right here that expands on this message and takes it even further. Click on it and let's keep walking this journey together over there.